All right, everybody. Thank you very much today, Joe. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. And yeah, I'm looking forward to actually hearing some wonderful things from you. And this is Joe, everybody. He's a criminal defense attorney, among many things. So, Joe, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Amazing, amazing. All right. So, I've got some questions for you, which I'm looking forward to getting wonderful answers to. And my first question to you actually here is like when you build criminal defense strategies for clients, right? Like, how do you approach the process of investigating and challenging the evidence presented by the prosecution?
Well, you read the police report and you formulate a theory. You
Interesting.
really got to get a sense of what the state's theory of criminal culpability is, why they have charged your client with a crime.
Got it. Now, can you share an example where, a strategy or an approach to an evidence led to a favorable outcome for you?
Well, years ago, there was a domestic violence charge against my client
Mm.
who was accused of hitting the complaining witness. The state calls the victim. I don't use that terminology. That's state attorney victim. That's George Wallace Law and Order crap. And we just wore it down that she wasn't believable, that my guy was believable. I call that the Warren Moon verdict, by the way. Warren Moon was a famous quarterback for the Houston Oilers. And oftentimes in domestic batteries, juries will say, so what? And they'll just walk. But this kid was charged with a felony. And we did take depositions and we just read and read and read. And you don't need to I'm not a leave no stone unturned as much as I am a find your theory and expound upon it.
Of course.
But that was an example.
Amazing. That's amazing. So now that leads me to my next question here. So when you find yourself in high profile cases, right? Obviously, we have media coverage and, that significantly can affect the public opinion, right? So now how do you manage the media influence on a case like that?
Well, years
What
ago, I
steps do you
represented
take?
America's first female serial killer, Eileen Wuornos, and there was a British documentarian named Nicholas Broomfield who did a movie on it, did two movies, one of which
Oh,
appeared
wow.
on HBO. And, there's two things involved here. There's a court of public opinion and there's a court of law. I'm an old school kind of guy, and I believe you should never you're not supposed to try your case in the press, but you and I both know people all do. But the thing about Eileen Carol Wuornos was that there we were trying to launch a salvo for the American public to view capital punishment dismissively, which they should. And Broomfield was sympathetic. So if nothing else, she had 7 judgments and sentences of death. There was no way we were getting her off death row. But in the respect that we were saying to cast her in a sympathetic light, I think we achieved by fully cooperating with Nicholas Broomfield in his assemblage of the documentary on her.
Okay. All right. So now, how do you ensure, personally, from personal experience, or even using this particular example with this client of yours, how do you then navigate the external pressure, right? Given media coverage and things of that nature, how do you manage the pressure coming from the public?
Well, I know this from being married. Sometimes you can't really react, though you might want to. And we lawyers are trained to be adversarial and combative and territorial and controverting. But when you do overreact, sometimes you actually create A plus B and C's and then that creates D. The old line from Watergate was never the crime, it's a cover up. But sometimes you can overreact. And it was interesting. I was reading a biography of Cal Coolidge, who's not my favorite, by the way, because he was a supply signer. But Coolidge was infamous for being very silent. And he often said, I said this to a defendant, criminal defendants, you'll never get in trouble with what you don't say. It can't. So you bear that in mind. It's like anything else. It's a balancing act. You don't want to be John Kerry'd. You don't want to be swift-boated. You don't want to be like Michael Dukakis. You want to answer back the way I'm using a lot of political analogies here, but you want to not be a doormat.
Of
and
course.
certainly speak your piece, but you don't want to make your reaction the show. You don't want to be
Okay, okay.
episodic and, you know,
I feel like I get that. I get a good picture there. You don't want to be a pushover. At the same time, you want to, you know, state what you want to state
assert
without
yourself,
making
express
it seem.
yourself. Charles Wright, 103 band.
Mm-hmm. Of course. All right, cool. So now I have another question for you here. So now, when you're dealing with a plea bargain, right? Like,
Mhm,
so in plea bargains, like obviously I know it's a crucial aspect of criminal defense, right?
mhm.
So can you discuss your philosophy on plea bargains?
My philosophy of plea bargaining is that perfect is the enemy of good. You got to compromise. Yesterday, I kept a young man out of prison. He didn't like it because he had to plead. But, dude, suspended sentence is a figment in the jail. They all, I'm going to go suspend. There's no such, well, there is a suspended sentence. Yesterday, they offered one. But, I mean, no prison. I mean, come on.
Mm,
And plus the fact, here's the deal. You're going to turn that down and go to trial and risk prison? You're going
mm,
to turn down an RD and go to trial and risk a DUI? That's just like, so my philosophy is it's compromise. You got to give something up, gain
mm.
something. And in most cases, the reality of freedom from being locked up is worth it, I think.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there's problems with a case if they're willing to plea bargain.
Right.
Plea bargain is something, by the way, that's kind of a popularly bandied about term that people watch CSI or they Google it. But it's, you drop this and he'll plead to this.
All right. So now with let's say in a situation where you have, because I mean you might have had this with your years of experience of maybe clients facing criminal charges and then they're experiencing a sort of stress or uncertainty or something of that nature, right? So now what I'm curious about specifically here is like how do you approach building trust and maintaining effective communication with your clients throughout the legal process, and can you provide an example with that as well?
Well, you know, you want to be professional with a client.
Hmm.
I mean, the lawyer instinct, because most lawyers are weak in math and sciences and they think they're, chameleons and connectors and people persons, all that sort of pablum.
Of course.
Um, I think the first thing you want to impress upon your client is that you really care about their case in a scientific way. You want to, first thing I say, what's your education? What's your background? Because I want to know about the person.
Of
And the
course.
other thing, most important thing is, did you make any statements? Talk to the cops. What have I got here? Because, most people think they can talk the way it is. Well, they talk. So there's that. But there comes a time building trust. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's like dangerous to get too emotionally attached to your client because then you begin to be a vicarious instrument for them. And, when the prosecutor insults them, you take it personally, and that makes you less effective as an advocate for them. And,
Mm.
you know, things worse, you have to be their advocate.
Of
You
course.
don't judge them. Do not judge. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the prosecutor and the judge.
Mm.
If they're
Mm.
not dressed properly, stop and ask yourself the question, maybe they don't have anything else to wear. If they smell like weed, well, marijuana's legal, Dad. I don't know. It's a harsh world. It's harsher now than it
Mm.
was when you came up. You
Mm.
being me. So, um, I always tell a client a lawyer's effectiveness on their behalf is rooted in the facts of the case. But you have to let the police report and the reality of the criminal system not be your ally, but be your backstop, and that's what you operate from. Because most defendants think, "Oh, this is a bunch of bull," and why can't you get this dropped? And my cousin's a bail bondsman in New Jersey. He thinks these charges are a bunch of crap. People who don't know, or they watch CSI,
Mm.
or they think that the court of law is a kitchen table. Let's just bring no, it's not. It's adversarial. It's
Of
punitive,
course.
especially
Mm.
in Florida.
Mm. All right. I really get a good picture on this. Now, I mean, the justice system being what it is, right? Obviously, you have things in place, you have rules and things of that nature. And not everything is perfect. I personally does not believe in perfection myself, but you know, obviously the criminal or I mean the justice system does have its flaws. it does have its flaws, right? Now, in your experience with the system, right? Like what systematic, like what issues or challenges with the system have you encountered, and how do you think, like how do you work, within those constraints, right? To your
Well,
best feeling.
race, unquestionably race. That's the number one.
Mm.
Socioeconomic status. That's the other one. I'm not better than anyone I represent. I'm just different.
You're built different.
Absolutely. Come on now. I'm a white male. How can I not feel different? I mean, I realize that things have kind of evened out, but it's still pretty much like it was in 1970 when I was born. I was born 56 actually, but there's a jury instruction that says our system is the worst for all except for all the others in the world. Well, that's damning by faint praise. We have mandatory guidelines, which we shouldn't have. We have a death penalty, which we shouldn't have. In some respects, we're closer to North Korea and Saudi Arabia and South Africa than we are to Norway. I mean, you have to ask yourself the question, what's the role of the criminal justice system? It's to punish. It's not to rehabilitate or reassimilate. That's for common cause and legal woman voters. I mean, and it's when you walk into a courtroom, the bailiff, the court, the clerk, everybody's got an opinion. Like people say to me, how can you defend somebody he's real guilty? Or how do you sleep at night? And it's like, doctor, how do you treat somebody who's dead? Guilty is the byproduct. Guilty is a very clinical and a very narrow. You're not guilty till you plead guilty, or you're convicted by a jury of your peers. Boom. There's no such thing as innocent.
Wow.
And I often tell clients, they're horrified to hear this. I don't care if you did it or not. I don't care. My belief in you is immaterial. I just want to know, what do they have on you? Can they prove it? Can I find 6 jurors who can find reasonable doubt? Boom. I want to get you acquitted. I'm not like your buddy, or I'm not going to cry with you or bond with you. But
I mean, your job is to get results, basically.
it's absolutely, it's rabbinical too. I quote, I'll talk to some young men of color and I'll say, have you ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X? Who's Malcolm X? Whoa, okay. Who's Obama? Okay, time out. But you often hear the term railroaded, right? You know where that comes from, don't you? It comes from the autobiography of Malcolm X, who saw his father literally his was cut in half by a railroad.
Oh,
So,
wow.
people casually throw that around and is justice a purchasable commodity? You bet. Baby, this is capitalism 101.
Okay, so actually so now how would you personally, like, how would you provide the best possible defense for your client, for a client who is in a situation like this?
Well, I'm kind of contradicting myself here. Isn't life a series of contradictions? You first and foremost, the first thing is, how old are you? You have children. How is this impacting your life? What's going on? And that's the first thing, because you have to understand, when you're in the crosshairs of a criminal prosecution, I don't think there's a greater stress out there. It's just really judgy. But let me backtrack here. Sometimes young attorneys make the mistake of getting co-opted by a defense attorney, by a judge, by a bailiff, and they believe all the crap they say. You want to be in your client's corner, and you want to advocate for him or her. And that with understanding how this is impacting them. Now, they may not be rational or sentient or, on page one or on the same planet as reality. But I think it is to thoroughly know the police report, what was taken, if there's DNA evidence, what is it? Is there scientific evidence? How strong is their evidence? Kind of where the fact of a juror is an ultimate finder of fact.
Amazing. This has been very, very educative for me personally, and I'm sure the audience will love it as well. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I got for you when it comes to the questions.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to doing this again with you. Thank you very much for being on our podcast today. I'm looking forward to the next one. Have a great one, and bye, everybody.